Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ankush here from Alif Consulting. Welcome in our Azure Weekly Update video. In this video, we will be going to talk about all of these updates which has been released by Microsoft in last week for Azure Cloud. All of these updates are in generally available, so we can go ahead and use all of these updates with our Azure workload, right? So let's quickly jump into the deep dive and understand all of these updates in a deep. Now the first update which we have is for Azure app configuration, and I would say it's a very welcome or required feature. Now we have a geo-replication available for Azure application configuration. This feature allows us to replicate our configuration store to the region of our choice. Changes to key values are synced across the each replica with eventually consistency. This feature provide a multiple advantage, right? So add resiliency for Azure outage, reduce latency, and distributed request load, right? So how it's add the resiliency? Application consuming the configuration data can be rely on the can be rely on a replicas in unaffected region in case of an outage into the region. Second, having a replica located in closer to your users lead to a quicker response time and improved data flow. Distributed request load. Locating replicas in a multiple regions allow us to distribute the request load and reduce the risk of exhausting request limit. So this is not for I would say whole application. You can go ahead and enable the geo application. It's just for the application configuration which you do inside the Azure app. That's something you can put into the geo replication. The next update which we have is for Azure Static Web Apps. Now support Python 3.10. Right. With this one, what we can do, we can build and deploy full stack Python 3.10 applications on Azure. Right. And with this one, we can leverage the latest language and runtime improvements in a Python. Right. And with this one, it do follow the Python 3.10, basically follow the Python 3.10 life cycles also. So these are the enhancements which is there with the Python. The next update which we have is now we have a Azure Cosmos DB serverless container with 1 TB of the storage, right? So with this one, it's going to provide customer with more flexibility and scalability for their workload with the extended storage. Customer can store and manage larger volume of data without having to worry about the storage limitation or having a provision additional resources. In addition to increase storage capacity, Microsoft have also enhanced the performance of serverless container by offering a more RU burstabilities that scales with the storage. This means it's allow us as storage needs grow, so our ability to handle the peak workload with increased read time read and write time capacity. So definitely if you're getting a more storage, you will get a more read write operations or the capacity to do the or handle the peak workload request. The next update which we have is for Azure database for PostgreSQL flexible server. For that we do have a new burstable SKU which is belongs to the B series of VMs. The new five burstable SKUs are B4MS, B8MS, B12MS, and B16 and B20MS. MS. And these burstable SKUs are basically provide us the low-cost solution for flexible CPU users to accommodate workloads with fluctuating users pattern. Now burstable SKUs are basically come in a picture where you don't need CPU on a regular basis, right? They suddenly spike for certain work, and then on that specific time uh, CPU is needed. So that's where burstable can be used because every series or every VM in a specific series have a CPU credit. That credits can be used to burst the specific operation in with the B series. Uh, these SKUs are particularly useful for the smaller database workloads that's required a minimum CPU performance for extended periods, but may require a full GPU power due to the incoming traffic or the workload requirement. New burstable series SKUs provide a cost-effective deployment solutions for such workloads that experience predicts bursts in performance rather than continuously maximum CPU performance. This approach can help us to do the cost savings while meeting the demand of unpredictable workloads. The next update which we have is for again Azure database for Postgres SQL flexible server. Now that is now also available into the Australia Central region. With this one, we can enjoy some of the new experience, optimized lower cost of ownership, best resiliency with John redundant high availability in selected regions, enterprise security with virtual network isolation and data encryption, access to stop start feature, more control with custom 1 hour maintenance, the openness of Postgres database community version. So these are the updates which we are also getting with the Azure database for Postgres SQL flexible server. The next update which we have is for Azure function. With this update, we have a improved scaling models for Azure function with target based scaling, right? So event based scaling is a fundamental to the serverless performance. That's where we use the serverless, where we only need to run the function or run the application or run the code when we need a event or the event need to be processed or event need to be scaling. The target based scaling is a improvement on the Azure function consumption and premium plan scaling experience, providing a faster and more intuitive scaling model for the customers. It is the currently supported by the service bus queue and topics, storage queues, event hub, and the Cosmos DB extension. The next update which we have is for Azure App Service. Now Azure App Services have a health extensions which can give us the rich health status. Application health extension is the application health monitoring service used for managing and upgrading the scale sets has been rolled out to health status, initializing an unknown for detailed health monitoring using the rich health state. With this new initializing and unknown status provide more control and flexibility over when the instances, repairs and rolling update are performed on the scale set. Rich health states allow us to mark the VM that are reachable but will consider unhealthy by configuring the emitted props response body on the HTTP and the HTTPS protocol. Uh, Next update which we have is for Azure Machine Learning. We have some of the new features which has been introduced or updated in this month. So we do have a personalized computer instance with custom applications, right? We do have a create on behalf of compute instance options. We do have a configure auto stop for idle compute instances. So these are the three updates or general updates which is there for the machine learning. The next update for we have is for Azure SQL. We do have some of the general availabilities for Azure SQL service. Now we can configure auditing for Azure SQL database using the user managed identity. Auditing can be configured to the storage account using the two authentication methods, which is managed identity and storage access key. For managed identity, we can use the system managed identity or the user managed identity. So these are the new updates which is there for the Azure SQL. The next update which we have is for Azure Cosmos DB for Postgres cluster compute stop API. So with these features, it's allow us to completely stop the compute on all the nodes into the Postgres cluster and pick up later on whenever we left off, right? Saving the time and cost. Previously, we need to run continuously cluster that need only for the time to time, such as a dev and test environment. And we need to delete a cluster or provision a new one later on, requiring potentially time consuming data ingestion and the cluster configuration. Now earlier for the Postgres, we what we need is Cosmos DBs for Postgres. We need what we need to do. We don't have an option to start it. So once our work is done, or once our development or test environment requirement is done, we just need to go ahead and delete it. But now with this new options with the API, it's allow us to stop the Azure Cosmos DBs for Postgres cluster and to save the course. As soon as our work is done, we can go ahead and shut down the Cosmos DB for Postgres SQL cluster, and as soon as we need it again, we can go ahead and start it. Right? The cluster compute stop start feature allow us to keep all the data and configuration as is for the unlimited period without cost of the cluster compute. Then we can start the compute on the cluster or all the cluster node and get our cluster state in when the compute was stopped. The next update which we have is for Azure Cosmos DBs for Postgres now have the REST APIs options. So with the REST APIs, basically what they do, they provide us the service endpoint that support a set of HTTP operations method, right? Which provide us create, retrieve, update, and delete access to the Azure Cosmos DB for Postgres cluster. Now we can use these REST APIs to perform uh, any kind of programs on all the cluster management operations such as the create cluster, Postgres server, parameter change, firewall rule delete, right? So all of these operation now we can use by using the REST APIs. Management REST APIs allow us to significantly decrease the overhead of repetitive actions such as the setting up a new development or test environment. So with this REST API option, we can simply go ahead and create a program, and that program can be used to run the API operations, right? So we don't need to go into the cluster and do the such kind of things again and again, right? So simply we can use these REST APIs to do all the configuration changes into the cluster. The next update which we have is for app insights. We can use now we can use stream analytics to process exported data for the application insight, right? So Azure Stream Analytics is the ideal tool for processing the data exported from the application insight. We can input our data from our event hub or blob storage into the Azure Stream Analytics to transform and filter the data when route is to the various sinks. For the event hub, we can configure our Azure Stream Analytic jobs to read the data from the event hub resources that we are exporting the data from the application inside, just like the another event hub input adapter. For the blob, Azure Stream Analytics allow us to configure the application inputs with the predefined path pattern that application inside used to write the blob storage into the Azure portal. The next update which we have is for again we have for the Azure Stream Analytics. Now we can connect Azure Stream Analytics to the Azure Data Explorer using the managed private endpoint, right? So Azure Streaming Analytics jobs run on a cluster can connect with the Azure Data Explorer resources or Custo cluster using the managed private endpoint. Managed private endpoint protects against the data extortions and allow Azure Stream Analytics job to connect securely to the resources that are behind the firewall or inside the Azure Virtual Network. The last update which we have is the retirement notice for the authentication for the legacy authentication method policies for the Azure Active Directory. As we know, the authentication method policies for Azure Active Directory service provide the ability to manage the method for MFA and self-service password reset centralizedly, right? So Microsoft is retiring the ability to manage the authentication method in the legacy MFA or SSPR policies on September 2024. So for the MFA and for the SSPR policies, we need to have a separate portal, right? We have a separate portal that we are using earlier, but now everything has been integrated in a one console. We can simply use Azure portal to enable MFA or self-service password reset, right? Which means we Microsoft is retiring all the legacy methods which are there for this both these two options. Well, that's it in this video. I hope you like this video. If you like, please click on like and subscribe for more upcoming videos, and feel free to reach us if you have any questions. Thank you.